I had always wanted to experience true solitude, away from the chaos of everyday life. One weekend, I packed my gear and drove deep into the forest, looking for the perfect camping spot. The towering trees surrounded me in a quiet embrace, their rustling leaves the only sound besides the distant chirping of birds. It was peaceful, exactly what I had been searching for. After setting up my tent in a small clearing, I took a deep breath of the crisp, earthy air. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. I lit a small fire, cooked a simple meal, and sat back to enjoy the silence of the wilderness. As the daylight faded and shadows stretched through the trees, a comforting sense of calm washed over me. Later that night, as I lay inside my tent, I heard a faint whistling. At first, I dismissed it as the wind weaving through the branches, creating a gentle tune. But as time passed, the sound grew clearer, more deliberate. It wasn't the random whisper of nature, it was rhythmic, intentional. A shiver crawled down my spine. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But the whistling continued, creeping closer with each passing moment. My heartbeat quickened as I strained to listen. The sound wasn't moving with the wind, it was circling my campsite. I unzipped my tent cautiously and stepped out into the moonlit forest. The trees stood still, their trunks casting long shadows across the ground. I flicked on my flashlight and swept the beam around. The whistling stopped. Silence pressed in on me, thick and suffocating. Then, just as I started to relax, I noticed something unusual. The trees surrounding my campsite bore strange carvings, symbols etched into the bark, glowing faintly under the moonlight. I was certain they hadn't been there before. My pulse pounded in my ears. The whistling returned, louder than ever, as if something was standing just beyond my line of sight. Panic surged through me. I hastily packed my belongings, my hands shaking. As I turned toward the path leading back to my car, my breath caught in my throat. Figures stood among the trees, motionless and silent. They weren't animals, nor did they look like any person I'd ever seen. Shadows clung to them unnaturally, distorting their shapes. I took a step back, and the figures shifted, mirroring my movement. My chest tightened. Then, in an instant, they disappeared into the darkness, only to reappear in another part of the forest. I turned and ran, my flashlight bouncing wildly in my grasp. The whistling escalated into a sharp, piercing tone that made my skull throb. Branches clawed at my clothes as I sprinted through the woods. The figures lurked at the edges of my vision, never getting closer, yet never falling behind. My legs burned, my breath came in ragged gasps, but I didn't dare slow down. At last, I saw the forest's edge, an open clearing where my car waited. I burst into the open space, and the whistling cut off abruptly. The silence that followed was almost worse. Gasping for breath, I scrambled into my car, locked the doors, and sped away without looking back. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, my mind racing. I had made it out. But the memory of that night, the eerie whistling, the symbols on the trees, and the shadowy figures lurking just beyond reach, would never leave me. Even now, when the wind blows just right, I sometimes hear it again. The whistling. Calling me back to the woods. And I wonder, if I ever return, will I make it out a second time? Camping had always been something I enjoyed when I was younger, peaceful, grounding, a way to escape. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't alone. I was camping with my kids, Emma and Jack, for the first time. And something about that responsibility, the need to keep them safe, made the air feel heavier, the woods somehow darker. We set up our tent in a small clearing, surrounded by towering trees that swayed gently in the wind like silent watchers. The crisp scent of pine filled the air, mingling with the distant sound of birds. As the sun began to set, the forest bathed in a warm, golden hue that faded slowly into a dusky blue. We roasted marshmallows over the fire, their sticky sweetness giving way to giggles and stories. The kids smiled, but I could still see it, the worry flickering in their eyes, like they could feel the forest hiding something just out of sight. And as the light died, the forest changed. The night came in thick and fast. The woods, once alive with chatter, fell into an unnatural silence. No insects. No owls. Just stillness. We crawled into our tent, zipping ourselves into a flimsy fabric shell that suddenly felt far too thin. Emma curled into my side, Jack pressed against my arm. I read to them, my voice low and steady, and eventually their eyes grew heavy. But just as they began to drift off, I heard it. A whisper. Not a voice, but something close. A rustling sound, soft and slow, weaving between the trees like it was circling us. Emma stirred, her small fingers clutching my sleeve. "Don't worry," I whispered, trying to steady my voice. "It's just the wind." But it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. I strained to listen. The rustling stopped. For a moment, the silence returned, and I started to breathe again. Then. Crunch. Closer. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I grabbed the flashlight and clicked it on. The beam flickered to life, casting pale light across the nylon walls of the tent. Emma sat up, her eyes wide. Jack whispered, "What is it?" but I couldn't answer. I unzipped the flap and slowly poked the flashlight outside. The beam cut through the darkness like a knife through velvet. The trees stood still. The clearing was empty. Then. Thud. The tent shook. Not from the wind. From something pressing against it. Emma gasped. Jack grabbed my arm. I could hear my own breath now, short, panicked, cold. Again, the tent rippled, harder this time. Then, the low sound of a growl, deep, guttural, not human. Panic surged. I threw the beam of light around wildly, my hands shaking. There was nothing. But the growling, it was there. Just outside. Just beyond reach. "Stay close," I whispered, barely holding it together. Emma clung to me, tears in her eyes. Jack's lip trembled, but he didn't make a sound. The growling rose, closer, louder, and then. Silence. The tent stopped shaking. I froze, holding my breath. No wind. No sound. Nothing. Just the dreadful weight of waiting. Then, the silence broke. A soft meow. For a second, I thought I imagined it. But then, again, meow. I unzipped the flap fully and stepped outside, my body still trembling. And there, in the beam of my flashlight, two glowing eyes blinked up at me. Whiskers. Our cat. Somehow, someway, our cat had followed us into the woods and found her way to our tent. She stood there, purring, brushing against my leg like she hadn't just nearly given me a heart attack. I laughed. I couldn't help it, half in relief, half in disbelief. Emma peeked out. Whiskers. Her fear melted into a breathless smile. Jack's face lit up as he scrambled out to hug her. We brought her inside, wrapped her in a blanket, and curled up again. The fear that had gripped us slowly began to fade, replaced by warm, sleepy laughter. I kept my flashlight close that night, though, just in case. By morning, the forest looked like an entirely different place. Sunlight poured through the trees, birds chirped, and the shadows had vanished. The woods that had terrified us felt safe again. We packed up, our little adventure already turning into a story the kids couldn't wait to tell. And as we walked back to the car, I realized something important. Fear comes in many forms, but sometimes, the scariest moments are just misunderstandings wrapped in darkness. Still, I'll never forget that growl. And I'll never camp without double-checking for cats again.